Okay, let's go into the presentation deck and let's go into live. Okay, we are at 9 o'clock on the dot. Thank you for everybody for joining us today. Welcome to AFCOM Southern California Chapter's first quarter 2026 educational series webinar. Uh, Before we, introduce our board, we have a couple people from the board that could not participate today. Doug Allman on our team, one of our San Diego representatives, was not able to join the call, and we also have Di Crable, who is Di Crable Delson, who's our IT recruiting czar. She had a family emergency, so wasn't able to attend the call here today. So. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and jump right into the actual content for today. And in our session today, this is the AVCOM State of the Data Center Report overview. And then also what we learned at the annual PTC Data Center Conference in January and out in Honolulu. Before we go too much further, just want to go through the agenda. Again, we're going to just do our kind of quick welcome and announcements. Then we'll kind of get into the State of the Data Center Report, Data Center Hawks, post PTC, again, PTC, Pacific Telecom Council, their podcast. And then we're going to get into overall group discussion on trends that we learned at PTC. Um, what I'll do is from here, let's kind of start with board introductions, and maybe we go. Let's go alphabetically, starting with Brad.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Brad Schulteis here, manufacturer's rep for data centers, Schneider Electric out of San Diego, California. Thank you for joining. Turn it over to David.
Hello, folks. David Sipes here. I've been a part of the board for, several years. You've probably seen me, and currently serving as the treasurer. So I will turn it over to Thomas.
How's it going? So my name's Tom State. I'm the data center manager for the San Diego Supercomputer Center. I currently, am one of the end users here that can contribute, some lively discussion. I'll pass it over to Yi.
Good morning, good afternoon. I'm Yeats Bullitt. I am with Ramble. I run our data center facilities electrical engineering group. I've been on the board for a few years. We are a full service consulting engineering firm that provides uh, planning, design, and commissioning services for data centers globally. Todd?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us here. Todd Sword with Southern California Edison. I'm in our Economic Development Services group, and we are all about data centers. So if you need power, we're ready for you.
Was Caitlin able to join on? Okay. We'll check back in with Caitlin. Caitlin Chow is our newest board member, and she joins us from Chats with Products. And I believe that she's not currently operating out of San Diego. My name is Jason Shepard. I'm the president. I feel like I've been on the chapter board since the 1800s. It's crazy. It's been a long time. Uh, but what we really want to do today is, before we get into the overall data center trends, want
Uh,
to kind of revisit who our community is here, right? So in the world of data
hey,
centers, we look at
Jason.
data centers in historically three primary categories. Corporate users, we call that enterprise, right? Their own corporate headquarters, their facilities, their data center facilities. We have the internet-centric data centers, the hyperscalers, right? And then the third-party operators, multi-tenant data centers, co-location facilities, managed services providers. That 3PL model. Historically, there was those three types. We've now kind of seen a new entrance to the community, which is the artificial intelligence, these AI facilities, and that's having an impact on the overall market. However, let's remember that our community specifically is the Southern California-based companies that are headquartered in this market. And for example, like in California, in LA, 21% of the corporations headquartered in Los Angeles are on the biosciences sector. The entertainment sector, San Diego Business Journal identifies biotech being over 50% of the publicly traded companies there in San Diego. Um, so again, what you don't see on this list is we don't have a single one of the hyperscalers headquartered in our marketplace. So when we go to these big data center conferences, whether it's PTC, whether it's Data Center World, whether it's Yada, and you come to these sessions and it's all AI this, all AI that. We always try to, with our board, take a mindset of, hey, how is this impacting our local users? So in advance of our call today, Di, who's our, again, the IT recruiting czar for our board, and here in Southern California, she reached out to a bunch of her clients throughout the greater Southern California marketplace. And I've got multiple sets of questions that were submitted. Just to go through a few of these, I'm not going to read these whole things, just going to read some of the points. How do you architect redundancy across the actual your platforms?
Hey,
What is the
Jason.
impact of end-to-end latency on on data centers today? How do you monitor and enforce the thermal stability at the rack level? Um, how do you isolate and contain faults within your network? Another constituent had asked, hey, how are these workloads? How do we balance these between on-prem, cloud, and colo? Um, how do we build a hybrid architecture that doesn't double or our operational problems? What are the realistic life cycles of our infrastructure? Um, failure modes. What have been the most common? What are the cost drivers in 2026? How do we secure ingress egress traffic in the data centers? And what I'll hopefully do is have a lot of our board members kind of chime in with their thoughts here. Um, Continue to move on here. We have some additional questions down
Hey,
below. Can
hey,
existing
Jason.
infrastructure support the power hungry modules? Um, if the grid cannot provide the power for the next 2 to 3 years, how are people maintaining operations for growth? Um, with again, jumping to the bottom here, flight to the interest rates. With high interest rates and massive construction costs, the financial model for data centers is under pressure. How are REITs dealing with this? And so now what we're going to do is we're going to kind of jump into what trends that we are seeing. Um, the first one I want to
Jason.
jump to
Jason.
is
Jason.
the state of the data center report.
Hey, Jason.
Jason.
Yes, sir.
You're not sharing your presentation, my
I'm
friend.
not.
No,
No, yeah. So I've been trying to get your
trying to
attention.
get you to realize.
Oh, all right. Let me go back into share. Well, that makes me look kind of silly then, doesn't it? All right. Is everybody seeing now?
It's coming up.
It's coming up. There you go.
There you go.
All right.
All right.
So I guess
Thank you there,
I'll just say
Yeet.
this is that these are the questions that I was just discussing. So now I feel silly, but what we'll do is we will post all of these questions onto our LinkedIn page so that everybody can see these. Again, this was a review of our constituents here in Southern California, the breakdown. Um, Again, the questions again, these will be posted. And now what we're going to do is we're going to get into discussing some of the trends. Again, can everybody see my screen?
We got you now.
All right. So back into share mode. So let's talk about the AFCOM 2026 State of the Data Center report. Bill Kleyman, who for AFCOM is doing his overall presentation on the full stack of this tomorrow. But what we did is we took out some of the key metrics that we wanted to discuss today and how it's impacting the actual data center community. First one was rack densities. They continue to rise. You'll see that in 2021, the average kW per rack was 7 kilowatts of power per rack. We jumped to 8.5 kilowatts in 2023, 12 kilowatts of power in 2024. Last year, we jumped amazingly to 16 kW. Now we're at 27 kilowatts of power per rack. That's, if you note down below, that's a 69% year over year jump, 2026 over 2025, and a 4 times multiplier over 5 years ago. this is an incredible increase in rack density across the actual platform, largely driven by AI and high performance workloads. What I want to be able to do is kind of turn to Thomas as an end user on our board and Yeet as an engineer in the data center sector to get their thoughts on what's impacting this and how does this impact the corporate user.
Sure, Jason. And these numbers here are, I would say, average across the board, not necessarily for the HPC base, which is something that I've, been in for a while. When we're talking about the new high density racks coming in, I'm seeing pretty much an average of 100 kW per rack, ranging up to 150. And I think the overall rack density average is just going to continue to climb significantly higher based on these HPC deployments that are, a factor or two larger in their power consumption than the standard deployment. Not saying that the standard deployment isn't growing at this exponential rate, but I think some of the numbers may be partially skewed by the extreme density of, the few deployments.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the key consideration here obviously is that, as the rack density approaches 20 kW or exceeds 20 kW, conventional air cooling just is not going to be sufficient to cool that rack down. So, and we get to that 20 kW or so per rack density, we need to start looking at what I consider to be the what I call the hybrid liquid cooling solution, which is at that point you need to really start looking at solutions that brings the cooling medium water, chilled water, typically closer to the racks, and you need to start looking at some close coupled cooling, such as active or passive rear door cooling. Now, as you start going higher in density and as you start approaching the 30 kW range, the active and passive rear door cooling methods are probably going to start being challenged as well. And that's where you're going to start looking at possibly going to liquid to chip or the conventional understanding of liquid cooling solutions. And, the challenge there is that, at 30 to 40 kW per rack, I would say it's probably pretty difficult to justify the capital investment to go to a liquid to chip cooling solution. And so, typically at that range, most everybody is going to probably shoot for the higher densities, 50 kW and above, to make it more cost effective. But regardless of how you look at this, for a conventional data center, enterprise data center owner or operator, their reality is going to be different. They're not going to be looking at hyperscale deployments of multiples of these racks. Typically, what they're going to be challenged with is possibly being in a conventional or a legacy data center, and they're going to have a stakeholder or end user within their governance structure come to them and say, "Hey, guess what? In your data center that I've got, you've designed around 6, 7 kW per rack back in 2021. I really need to deploy this high performance compute cluster that's 60 kW or more." And that's going to be something that's going to challenge his facilities team. That's going to be something that's going to challenge his infrastructure. And it's going to require him to look at some of these solutions to address that particular need.
So
Adding on to that
he,
point, I would say the retrofitting of those legacy facilities is much more difficult than starting from scratch and ground up HPC build. And so that's where I think a lot of the challenge comes in is figuring out how to retrofit. It's a full architectural redesign, and
Right.
it takes significant time and effort.
And it's disruptive. It's going to require, getting into your distribution loops. If there wasn't provisions made back when that was installed originally for flanges and valves to add additional loops to get into your white space, that's a whole level of complication that's going to make it very, very difficult. But that is part of what the challenge of enterprise users who are not hyperscalers, who are not in data centers that were built for this kind of workload, are faced with now.
Absolutely.
so to address the question of one of the pre-sent in questions is how is the industry dealing with the lack of power from a grid standpoint? And we'll address some of that in the PTC summaries as well. But on-site code generation, 65% as of 2026, the 2026 survey, 65% of data center respondents said that they're either they're 25% are already using on-site code generation. Another 23% are planning to implement it within the next 12 months, and then 17% are exploring their options. So 65% overall are currently looking towards on-site code generation to either supplement or provide bridge power to be able to get until they get the power that they need. I guess what I will say is that there are power is very, very tight across the country. There's a close by market, I'll just say without naming names, where the entire metros is not going to be able to have energy supply for the next 10 to 12 years for these large scale projects. Now, you can still find pockets of power in different markets, but these AI requirements are the big Pac-Man in the industry gobbling up power. Let's talk about the next one here, rebalancing cloud workloads. Something we used to call cloud repatriation. I guess we're still calling it cloud repatriation. And let's talk about what that means. That's not meaning that customers, clients are leaving cloud. I think that there's rebalancing their cloud workloads is how the State of the Data Center report identifies it. So let's look at the statistics now below. In 2022, 59% of survey respondents said that they were migrating applications back and workloads back from cloud to either on-premises data center facilities or in cloud co-location workloads. In 2023, that had spiked to 83%, a little bit down to 2024, back up to 80% 2025, and we fell to 2026, 67% in 2026. A lot of the comment here was, and I'm summarizing it down below, but this is a few paragraphs worth of information consolidated into one overall comment here, which is that move towards rebalancing cloud workloads. It's a deliberate balance of hyperscale cloud platforms, colocation, and on-premises infrastructure. Anybody want to take a stab at adding comments to this from the board?
Hey, Jason, Bill's here. After many attempts at trying to log in,
There you are.
minutes later, it just kept saying that I was already in when I wasn't. And so Diana was very kind in sending this over. I will add some color to this. First of all, thank you for inviting me. I am extremely sorry that I'm late. I'm trying to represent. I got my Data Center World jacket on, so there we go. Hey, everybody from SoCal. I'm in Chicago. It's snowy out there. I'd much rather be hanging out with you all. Jason, first of all, thank you for sharing all of this. And one of the things I want to make sure that we do is everybody on this call, if I haven't met you, hi, I'm Bill. I'm the executive chair of data center programs at Informa. I get a chance to put on this wonderful event and conference. And then when I don't sleep, I'm also the CEO of a company. This, and I'm glad you started here. I'm sure you already had a couple slides, Jason. So I've written this report for 10 years. And 10 years ago, I'll give you a cool statistic. The average rack density, I think you've got it in there, it was about 6.1, actually. It was back in the day, right? We've had Ken Patchett, who's currently working at Lambda Labs. He was doing a keynote presentation with me. He said that Microsoft's data center in 1988, I wasn't even in this country yet. It was 1 kilowatt per rack, which you could basically cool with, a box fan and a whole bunch of optimism. It'll work just fine. But you can imagine just how far we've come, right? So it was roughly a 70% year over year jump. 27 kilowatts is I mean, listen, let's be honest. You're starting to push the boundaries of how much air can dissipate heat from mechanical equipment. I'm not saying you can't, obviously, but we're starting to push into that density level. And obviously what you saw from GTC and what Jensen Huang was just announcing in terms of just the extraordinary amount of density that we're going to be producing, I'm not surprised. I'm grateful that the respondents in our report is indicating that there's clear growth. And Jason, you're doing a wonderful job covering all of the aspects here in terms of like, cool, we've got this massive shift towards density. And as far as the repatriation part of it goes, this is not like Bill Kleyman or Jason or anybody saying, hey, cloud's going away. It's just our industry is maturing. We better understand what widget needs to live on-prem versus what needs to live in the cloud. And the honest reality is, especially now that we're seeing these AI workloads becoming way more dense, way more expensive, right? These aren't pizza box servers, email servers, or like, Citrix or Exchange. They're a lot more valuable, and I truly believe that this is a part of this whole gigawatt era thing that we've been talking about. And by the way, all of you people in SoCal, my AFCOM people, please keep an eye on the AFCOM postings. I've been doing regular blogs and articles. I'll actually go ahead and put them here in the chat window so you can keep one up. You can keep looking at it. There's one thing, Jason. Do you have the thing on security here, or no? Is that later?
I didn't. I wasn't sure if you were going to be presenting your slides. So in case we didn't have you, I put up one summary slide. So if you want to share your screen,
I do.
You're welcome to do so.
I came so prepared and so equipped, and then I'm like 20 minutes late. I'm gonna try and breeze through this so that we can actually show. Am I able to share my screen?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll do this real quick so you guys can see it. And let me minimize this stuff. I totally came prepared. I even got your logo in there. It's all pretty. There we go. Can you see that?
How about the pier? You gotta love the pier.
I gotta love the pier, man. We've got Navy Pier in Chicago, except that it's covered in snow and it's like, basically Alaska right now. But it'll be prettier in the summer and the spring. Jason, thanks for kicking this off. And by the way, again, if I'm not connected with some of the wonderful folks on this call, I expect my LinkedIn invites to be blowing up. Very quickly, co-founder, CEO of Apollo.us. Everyone knows how to use ChatGPT or your favorite search engine. You can look us up. The executive chair of data center programs. They gave me a fancy new title. Fine. I get a chance to oversee now the global brand. By the way, thank you, all of you. Data center world is legit now world, right? We're going to India. We got Australia. We've got Southeast Asia, excuse me, South America, all over the place. So our brand is expanding. In case you haven't noticed, data centers are having a bit of a moment. So like Jason's slide, I'm actually just going to go through some of the high level things, some of the popular ones. And I want to make sure we have a few minutes here at the end to just talk about this because you guys have all brilliant ideas. This is a partnership that I just started with LinkedIn News. They are syndicating some of my bigger predictions. And this one I wrote recently, that in 2026, more data center capacity will be deployed or under contract than in all of the previous years combined. I believe that. I do believe it. And when LinkedIn saw that, they're like, Bill, can we put this on, on the news feed? And I'm like, yeah, I actually, one of those times where it's a pretty bold statement, but just a few weeks into this new year, we already saw multi-billion-dollar acquisitions, and you had Align data centers being bought for a tremendous amount of money. So the size of our facilities are getting much bigger, right? And Jason, you kick this off, and I have a density slide that's coming up here in just a second. The size of these things are getting fundamentally larger, right? So 32 megawatts was last year, right? And even before that, we were like in the 20 megawatt range. And let's be honest with you, like 4 or 5 years ago, a facility that was 20 to 30 megawatts in size was big, right? That was, you got yourself a building. Good job, team. That it looked great, right? There's another statistic in here that there's going to be the need to build new data centers is going to increase by 6x over the next 36 months, by 6 times. That was in the report. And these facilities are going to get larger. And I don't have the slides on this in this because it's a bit of a recap, but you better believe that primary markets are saturated. Secondary markets are going to become primary, tertiary, secondary, and everything in between, which I think it's great. It's great. I'm an agent of change. I don't mind shaking up this stuff a little bit. But it's definitely an era where we're a little bit uncomfortable because there's challenges. There's challenges. It's not about just getting, hey, the GPUs aren't available. Have you seen the price of RAM? Like, hey, I need a hard drive. Cool. So does these other million people, right? So like there's some serious challenges in terms of even getting some of this stuff. And like there's costs that are going up. There's trying to meet the cooling demands. Obviously, talent is in the top 3. The biggest ones I want everybody to sort of start thinking about, and this is like your gold nugget moment. It's this one. 66% of our respondents came back and said they're going to be experiencing a challenge due to supply chain constraints. This is bus bars. This is phase 2 equipment. This is power equipment. This is cooling infrastructure. This is racks. You know who's having a moment? Raised floor people are having a moment because all of a sudden those 2,000 pounds per square foot tiles, they're not cutting it anymore, right? You need something way heavier to handle things like liquid cooling. One of my partners in Omaha, Nebraska has got 5,000 pounds per square foot tiles, and they need them for their motor rear door heat exchangers because those things they're expensive. They've slapped car radiators on the back of a rack, and they're like, hey, cool, we've got liquid cooling now. So the supply chain aspect of this is pretty significant. The one thing for everybody in this call, just to kind of think about, is this metric: 15% have experienced an outage. I'm not saying the facility went down. That's not the case, but something happened, right? Because they were not able to get a part. Something was missing. There was certainly a challenge there. So just something to sort of think about there. Now, there's
Hey,
one.
Bill, quick question for you on this, right? Which is, and again, I know, sorry, it was probably that link issue was probably a my problem thing. I apologize for that. So when we start for our sessions here in Southern California, because California is an expensive place to operate. So a lot of our corporate users have their data centers in Phoenix or in Las Vegas and what have you, where the IT teams are here. So, and we start off the call by saying, hey, if you look at the actual makeup of our footprint of IT operations teams and what have you, they're the traditional brick and mortar corporate users. We don't have a single hyperscaler headquartered here in Southern California. So if what you're seeing here, how is this impacting the actual end user, the data center customer that's headquartered here, that's utilizing data centers? Because right now they're out there competing with these ginormous AI requirements for this infrastructure component in the marketplace. So when you're seeing these trends, what I'd love your opinion is each time you share something, hey, how's this impacting the corporate user?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm actually doing it like multiple things in parallel. Do I not have access to the chat here? I might not. Because I
Yeah,
was going to
so
post.
the chat's not there. So the only thing that's open is the question dialogue, Bill. So
You're right. You're right. I don't know if I can post anything in there. I can answer questions, but I can't post them. Anyway, you'll take a look. The articles are available. Jason, I'm going to send them to you. There's a couple of new ones that came out recently, like the gigawatt era, one on power and bravery, and so on. Okay. How do I say this? Look, yeah, California is expensive. And when I worked at Switch Data Centers for 4 years, you better believe like we were going after those California market customers to try and come to Nevada, right? And it was highly enticing. It was highly enticing, right? Rob Roy built this gigawatt Nevada project, right? 1.2 gigawatts of solar and battery arrays, and he was able to get the price down to 4.9 cents a kilowatt hour, which is kind of ridiculous, right? Then couple that with latency improvements and all of that, and so you're getting this influx of people trying to come in, and it's not without its challenges. Obviously, I think California in general is a very healthy market. I don't think that's going to slow down. Um, Cost is going to be an issue, certainly, but so is proximity. So is going to be working with local government and local municipalities. Um, there's no sugarcoating it, right? If an opportunity arises and an organization wants to move to Arizona or Nevada for cost constraints, they're going to do it, right? But I think making sure that we entice the people to stay in our local communities or at least in our local facilities is going to be important. I don't really have a great answer. I remember when I was at Switch, like we had a lot of California companies. Disney was there. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of California was not in California. They were in Nevada. And I could point into the rack they were sitting, but I don't think that it's any sort of exodus. I absolutely believe that we're going to be experiencing it's going to be a rising tide situation. We're just seeing so many new workloads and so much coming online. Look, I just got back from GDC, not GTC, the Gamer Development Conference, right? And this was in San Francisco, California. Beautiful, nice, Informa event, and we had a lot of gamers and developers. Do you know what they were? They were nervous. They were all nervous because their part of the world is quickly transferring to ours into the data center space. Because now, all of a sudden, I don't know if you heard about this, guys. There's a new Microsoft console coming out. It's going to cost upwards of $1,500. And do you know what the most expensive parts is going to be? The GPU and the RAM, right? And the GPU they're putting on there is a successor to the 9070 AMD technology they've gotten there. And it's not just for better graphics, drum roll, it's for AI inference at the edge, right? And these gamers are developers. The gamer developers are flipping out because their world is about to be flipped upside down. more of the stuff that they're creating is going to be processed and delivered through a data center ecosystem instead of like a gamer developer or a studio. They are now not just focused on the Cloudflare, the latency, is it choppy, is there lag, but now creating games which feel alive, which remove this scripted sort of aspect. So I'm just giving you one example. I know, Jason, you had a great question, but I feel strong there's going to be other industries and other aspects of what's going to float our boats in terms of helping support, more of the market in California.
Yeah, but by the way, just as an update there, before this call, if you were to look at any of the industry stats saying, hey, vacancy rates in data center space is below 2%, well, that's mostly the wholesale colocation side, right? And so right now, I just made a couple calls yesterday. DataBank has about a megawatt with the power available in a retail colocation facility here in Orange County. Miley Kaiser at CoreSite, they've got a couple megawatts up in their LA3 facility. Down at the Seascar facility here in Orange County, they got about a megawatt worth of power available, et cetera. But the whole idea is that there is retail colocation space available for customers here in Southern California. It's not a large amount, but you're not going to be competing with the AIs for that 500 kW, is my point.
I agree. It's really funny. A megawatt, right? That's adorable, right? What I got a server rack downstairs that takes up a megawatt. I'm kidding. That'd be pretty cool, though, right? That's practically nothing. Let's just be blunt with you, right? That's practically nothing, right? And that is absolutely, we're actually at 1% or less in the primary markets, right? Especially like Northern Virginia and these NFL cities. Look, my company, our biggest data center where we have our GPUs none of them are in primary markets. Omaha, Nebraska, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I got some in Amsterdam, got some in Texas, got some in California. And we're trying to find not just that 1 megawatt, by the way, right? We're trying to find organizations that can handle 40, 50, 60 kilowatts per rack, that can do liquid cooling, they can actually support GPU architecture and AI. So, it's not just that you've got a megawatt available to you. It's a lot more than that. But no, that's a great point, right? We're saturated, and look, Jason, you invited me to this webinar, and guess what's going to happen? You're going to get some tidbits. All of you. How many people are on this call? You got 28 folks. You're going to hear some stuff that's brand new. Nobody else heard of it. You ready for this? We're going to be like crazy style blowing out some records for Data Center World this year. We've already broken the record for how many people have registered like right now. And this is understanding how many people are still yet to register. We're 50% over where we were exactly the same time last year, you guys. Like thousands of people have already registered for Data Center World in Washington, D.C., right? And this is a group that usually comes in and registers like kind of at the last minute. It's just who we are, right? It's fine. But holy cow, I'm going to tell you guys something else. So tomorrow is the insider's guide for the Data Center World event. That's me. I'm presenting it. If you can sign up. Okay. You guys want to hear something wild? And Jason, this goes back to this, like we don't have a lot of space room. There are, first of all, record-breaking number of exhibitors. There's 500 plus exhibitors. It's officially the largest expo hall, data center-oriented expo hall in the world. Of them, 286 are net new exhibitors. 286 people. And you know who some of these folks are? I'll show you. Hang on. Look at this. Pipe fitters. Because they're like, hey, you guys need liquid cooling. Let me show you this cool water manifold all of a sudden, right? Or there's like doorknobs and security people and drone security. Like all of these different things are coming online. And I love that for us because we get to learn, right? We get to see what people are building and creating, what people are innovating. There's all sorts of battery technologies that are going to be presented as well. Like we're having a moment, and I think it's really neat. And I fully intend on continuing to ride this moment, but doing it in a very positive way. So, I mean, Jason, yeah, going back to your point, it's a wild time in this market. Yeah, pretty crazy. I got some more stuff. And I love this discussion. If there's anybody got anything else, please interrupt and stop me. This next one is going to be important. Security threats. I am going to call out some brand new things, as well as the following. On Friday, a brand new AFCOM article is going to drop Let me see if I can find the article here so I can read you some little tidbits from the piece as well. So security was actually a little bit surprising for us because we saw quite a few changes, mainly in the top line part of it, right? So this is a big one, and it's a very uncomfortable topic. It is what it is, right? And yesterday I was on a really good podcast with David McCall from QTS, and it's called the QTS Experience, and we talked about this. And honestly, for those who know who I am, I'm usually like this, very energetic, hyper, like, hey, I love data centers. And this was one of the more somber types of discussions that I had because 10 years in a row, 10 years, the number one threat was ransomware or data exfiltration. It was ransomware, like for like the longest time, right? For the first time on our 10th anniversary edition, human threats took the top spot. And I was like, oh, all right, are we finally having this discussion? So on Friday, AFCOM is going to be releasing my fourth column that's titled The New Front Line: Securing Data Centers in an AI Era. And look, we're talking about some really uncomfortable things, including reports. You heard what's happening in the Middle East, right? You understand that some of our facilities, AWS facilities, at least two of them, I think three of them actually were hit by drones. And in my article, I point out something insane, which is, now there's discussions of missile defense systems being put on top of our data centers. Missile defense systems being put on the roofs of our facilities. Just take that for what it's worth, because for the first time ever, our infrastructure, these facilities have entered the battlefield. There's no comfortable way for me to discuss this, none whatsoever. I'm Ukrainian. We have digital infrastructure that's been, struck in Ukraine. I get it. It's a challenging moment, but this is the first time where at this large scale, it's become a really, really massive issue. So keep an eye for that article. It's going to come out tomorrow. I'm sorry, Friday. It's a lengthier one just because we dive into a little bit. We talk about the cost, the assumptions, the risks behind it, and I give off some really good practical advice on how to approach this conversation as well. So keep an eye on that.
Bill, well, back on your security piece there for a second. At PTC this year, there was a lot of discussion relative to obviously the limits on power that we have available across the United States right now. And a lot of these AI requirements that are now we're seeing some of them going down into South America. And there's the concept of, okay, well, what about data security and data sovereignty relative to the training piece, right? Which you might see going down in Brazil, right? And then it shifts to inference. And then the inference, are we going to see inference down there in South America, or is there that data repository, is that more latency sensitive? And I guess we're more concerned is what is the security threat on data being outside of the borders of our country for the inference piece of this? And any thoughts there?
So this is a big part of what we do at our wheelhouse at Apollo. So just a heads up. So my company, we have our own GPUs, we have our own full AI MLOps development platform, and then we also have our own app delivery architecture. So we believe and work with sovereign AI quite a bit. None of our stuff ever lives in the cloud. None of it's used to train any sort of foundational model. Now, Jason, what you said is really, really impactful. There's concern. And if you haven't seen what happened with Anthropic or Claude, it's actually, yes, you've probably heard our administration, talking about it to some extent, but the reality is that a hacker was able to break in the Mexican government and steal 150 gigabytes of data. Right. That is not great. That is a serious challenge, right? So whatever our administration is talking about, whatever side of the aisle you're on, you need to filter through the language and focus on how it matters to you. And so to Jason's point, you need to be very, very careful. Even a pinky promise, like this is a big reason why Copilot and OpenAI, there's still concern about it, which is why while we work with OpenAI, we don't have to, we don't necessarily do that because you still have to use the API that sends data into the OpenAI architecture for you to use those models, right? And so even a pinky promise is like, no, none of this data, you have the potential for a break-in and a leak, which is exactly what we saw with the Mexican government and Anthropic. So Jason, I absolutely believe that we're going to be seeing more localized AI processing, more inference, more enterprise level training, because the market's really broken down into three major buckets, you guys. There's the XAIs of the world and OpenAIs that have 200,000 GPUs that are training the next foundational model. Good for them. That's pretty private, secure, and localized. Then there's enterprise AI. You don't need 100,000 GPUs, but you need like 5 or 6,000 GPUs to train your own LLM and AI and enterprise LLM. That's where it gets kind of sticky, because where you're going to find 6,000 GPUs, right? You're going to have to go somewhere. Look, Microsoft is paying $26 billion to Nebius just to use their infrastructure for 5 years, right? Microsoft doesn't have those GPUs. So how and where do you partner with that? And then finally, the big aspect is inference, right? And I do believe that right now the world is split at 80% training, 20% inference. In about 3 years, it's going to flip, because we're going to have to use those models to actually produce something productive, right? And that's going to become 80% inference and then 20% training these new models. And I do believe that on-prem, localized, non-cloud types of environments are going to have a big impact in that, especially with governments, sovereign AI, highly confidential, classified, or regulatory industries. Think like finance, healthcare, for example, government. Those are all going to start to look at all.
Is inference latency sensitive?
Yeah. More so because training, like, let me give you an example, right? Data Center World Power, we had Governor Dunleavy on our stage, right? And he's like, build data centers in Alaska. And we're like, right, but your latency from Alaska to, like, let's say Seattle is like 13 milliseconds, right? So you can build big training farms, but if I want to connect to a faster internet, I have to catch the husky that's running around with an Ethernet cable, right? That's the only way I'm going to connect in Alaska. And I'm being facetious. They're doing a lot of work to improve.
Well, I'm using your own data here, and your 2023. I didn't see it in this year's report, but your 2023 data center survey, 64% of survey respondents needed to be at or below 20 milliseconds between their facilities from a latency standpoint.
Yeah.
I guess the question is being, LA to Salt Lake City back is 18, LA to Denver back is 27, right? So, for example, we're still talking about trying to keep those inference clusters close, if that's the correct term.
Yeah, you do want to keep them in state. They don't have to be put in a major market, though, right? So they can be smaller edge data centers. Like, my sweet spot of where we put our workloads and where we put our GPUs, these facilities are no more than like 60 to 70 megawatts in size. They're not like that. That's the biggest that we need to go, right? They don't need to go any larger than that. But yes,
Bill, I have a question for you too,
ahead,
if you don't mind. So I'm going to turn this more into a question, but as you say that there's human threats, internal, external, is the top of the margin here. How much are we putting as a data center operator, how much are we putting into our budget for the top 2 or top 3? Are you seeing any trends on how budgets are?
Yeah, here they are.
Look at that.
You literally teed up my next slide, David, without even knowing it. I appreciate it. And by the way, no, David did not see this deck. No one did, actually. Jason's like, come here, present. I'm like, here's a deck for you. So, David, this is pretty much it. This is where. So, first of all, 84 respondents are saying we're going to be investing in it. Period. We're going to be doing something, right? But this is a lot of where their dollars are flowing, I guess, David, if that's how we're going to say it, right? Yeah. So comprehensive security, better vendor contractor vetting, increased focus on perimeters, biometric access controls, and even like integration of AI-based analytics and threat detection. That's some of the bigger places where they're spending some dollars. It's a great question. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, no, pleasure. Definitely. And Jason, you touched on this briefly before. Rack density is going up. It's continued to go up. I'm not surprised by this. I think we're gonna continue to see innovation in racks and the way we do it. And the changes, what we've seen, about 70% expect rack density to continue to increase. And look, people are doing 2 things to make this happen, right? They're doing liquid cooling to some extent, and they're doing improvements of airflow and containment. Like, airflow is not going away. Let's not BS each other here. But like, liquid cooling certainly is going to be coming in to stay. how do we bring this liquid closer, excuse me, to the actual infrastructure that's supporting AI, these high density gear. Look, if I have liquid cooling purists on this phone call and you're about to send me a DM saying Bill Kleyman rear door heat exchangers are not liquid cooling, fine. I'm not going to get into an argument with you. But the reality is we are effectively bringing that liquid way, way, way closer to the actual mechanical equipment that requires it. And honestly, for many of the data centers out there, a rear door heat exchanger is the least intrusive, easiest way to bring liquid closer to the rack. It really is. It is a car radiator slapped to the back of a rack. We're seeing a tremendous amount of innovation in that space. And it is an easier way than have to sort of reform an entire rack to do directed ship immersion, two-phase single, whatever the case is. So just kind of keep that in mind. But the reality of the situation is this, right? So about 40% of the respondents came back saying that their existing cooling solutions are failing to meet their requirements. That's not insignificant. Like, this isn't like a couple people. Like, this is a good amount of folks are saying, I'm concerned. I'm not sure what to do. I have to figure this out. And please remember, everybody, as you're looking at your own environments, as you're supporting other people, this isn't like a little change here. This isn't like we're going from 5, 10 to like 20 kilowatts per rack. Look, Jensen Huang got up there and talked about the NVL 576, a 600 kilowatt rack. This is not just cooling anymore. We are actively, this is back from me presenting at the Schneider Electric Innovation Summit and working with Vertiv as well. Like DC, direct current is going to go directly to the rack. I absolutely believe it, because if you think, for those electrical people, nerds in this, a AC power system coming into a rack that supports a megawatt is going to be this thick in diameter, right? It's going to be ridiculous. But a DC is going to be the size of my thumb, right? But it's going to require different types of power equipment, right? You got to have batteries and got to have systems that can handle that load, you guys, right? But that's where this mindset is going. And please understand, if you're sitting here like, I'm kind of overwhelmed by this, you're not alone. You're not alone. Please. A lot of people in the industry, this is why we have 286 new exhibitors coming to the data center world, because they feel that they have some of the solutions to all of this. It's driven by AI, not a bubble. Please, this is not a bubble, right? This is not the .com era. We're not investing in speculative technologies. There's massive amount of capital that's vetted, that's being invested in these systems. Do you guys hear how many chips Jensen is going to ship? Over 1 trillion chips are going to be shipped in 2026. This is a silly number. And then, like, if you take a look at the investment overall, none of this is slowing down. And it's mainly because it's not a technology shift. It's a societal shift. The way you and I interact with data has fundamentally changed forever and ever, right? That's the case right now that you need to understand, is the way we ask questions and interact with information has changed from, a 5-year-old using ChatGPT to somebody who's 90 years old asking for a sourdough recipe and for them to getting walked through it, right? That's how adaptive this technology has become. And just, I need you to understand that none of this is slowing down. 72% of respondents expect capacity requirements to increase. None of this should be surprising whatsoever. 50%, 48, let's just use real numbers, expect this, including 48% who expect a significant increase. Not a small change, but an actual step change in how big that's going to be. And this is just us trying to prepare for all of this.
So Bill, quick question for you there. So at the very beginning, one of Dai's clients had submitted a question, like, where are these AI workloads going to live for the corporate user? Right. So, for example, if they don't have the infrastructure in their own enterprise on-site corporate data center facility, are these solutions going to be available within co-location facilities, or is it all going to be in public cloud?
Yeah.
Where do you see it residing, these AI workloads for the corporate enterprise user?
There's going to be two. There's going to be some that are perfectly fine to live in the cloud, to leverage Amazon's or Microsoft or Google's GPU, their AI development architecture, and there's some that are going to turn to companies like ours. So Apollo works with oil and gas manufacturing. We just officially signed on our first ever data center client as well. But we have, like I said, our own GPUs. None of them are sitting in Microsoft or Google or Amazon. They're all in privately held co-locations. But my company is the tenant. We get the workloads, we get the enterprises, then we place them into the respective data centers where they need to live. So my end user enterprises, for example, an oil and gas giant who is $2.2 billion in size, but they manufacture steel, pipe, parts and components for heavily regulated, highly compliant industries. They flat out said we can never put this stuff in the cloud. We just literally cannot. So all of their workloads are sitting on our ecosystem. I'll be honest, some of them are in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and some of them are in Omaha, Nebraska. Highly secured ecosystems and a multi-tenant environment where none of that's going to go anywhere and their data is persistently theirs. It all comes down to the workload, right? And if you have a very compliant, highly regulated workload with data that you know you can't share, you need to be very cautious in terms of where you put it. That's the simple truth of it. And then you also just need to make sure that your partner can handle that kind of workload and scale along with you. And just, it's not, look, I've said this before. We live in a world that's just discovered oil, but hasn't invented the internal combustion engine. We've got all this raw material and we're just starting to figure out what to do with it. And where we are in the market right now is how do we go from a barrel of oil to a shoelace, right? Because we know that oil is in shoelaces, and not just any shoelace, one that can actually tie your shoe and doesn't cost as much as a shoe store. That's where you work with a good partner that help you align, requirements and needs of where this stuff can live. We have those conversations pretty persistently, except that, we focus on enterprise workloads that need a little bit more extra security, right? And by the way, we don't, the cost is less because we're able to control the workloads and how resources are being allocated. But to answer your question and it's going to be a good understanding of the workload, the data, the requirements, who's accessing it, security requirements, etc. It's a great question.
Let's give a couple more minutes. I want you to plug your overall. You have another session tomorrow.
I do.
And so I don't know if you've got to want to post any kind of link or what have you for that, or if it's even sold out, right?
Hang on a second. I'm trying to.
And then I guess what I'll do is I want to make sure I can open up for any Q&A that we have in the audience, and I don't know if Brad or anybody else on the team can look at the Q&A box.
I got it open, Jason. Right now, we don't have any open questions at the moment.
Okay.
I can't post the link. It's an insider's guide to data center world with yours truly.
I think I've got it. So what I'll do is I'll post it.
Please.
I'll post it on our page for anybody who's following our LinkedIn page.
I'm looking at the rest of this deck here. I'm just going to fly through it as people have questions.
Sure.
So this is an interesting one. So this is the stuff that we work on at Apollo as well. So we get a data center coming to us and saying, Bill, we do this thing manually. Can you help us create an AI app to actually support some of this stuff? We don't build bespoke custom applications. We have frameworks that already exist, but we built into DSIM. We help understand errors, time to market. This is going to be a big one. At Data Center World this year, my buddy Jabbar is leading the DSIM workshop. And he's going to be talking about AI. And if you remember Schneider Electric with their foresight, you're like literally full on generative AI in DSIM at this point. Like, hey, what thing should I look at this site? And it's like, your power is weird. You should take a look at that. That'd be pretty strange if the AI answered it like that. It probably want some more detail, but that's the interesting part. We're going to be seeing more integration, I think, into DSIM, data center infrastructure management. Now, are we going to be handing the keys off to this thing? No, we are not. Just to give you an example, we have a scenario where we can literally look through all the components and say, hey, out of these 50, you've got 5 that have outdated firmware. Now, I can go to the AI and say, you go update it. Am I going to do that? I'm not going to do it. I'm going to say you can download the updates, you can put them in the correct folder, then I'll go ahead and apply them. But now you've already saved me a whole bunch of time in terms of looking for them. So there's obviously benefits in terms of approaching that. Really quick, you guys, you understand that we're going to have to build these things a little bit differently. We're seeing the traditional approach still there, but very, very quickly, 30%, actually about 43% are doing hybrid or all-in-one prefabricated architecture. I think it's great. I think it's so wonderful that we're doing it in these modular prefabricated architectures. I've had a chance to visit what Compass is doing like a million different times. And I believe that this might be a big way for us to deploy edge infrastructure and so on. I think it's going to be a big one. Power and resiliency. You know all this. there's no question about it. It's an insane time right now for us to be in this power market. Real quick, Schneider Electric came out with a new statistics: 200 gigawatts of energy by 2030. 200 gigawatts by 2030. Do you guys remember the Back to the Future where it was with Doc Brown? 1.21 gigawatts, right? Now we're laughing at it. Like, oh, so cool. That's just a little data center campus over there in the corner, right? Yeah, Jason Shepard can build that overnight. Probably not. But that's how quickly we've got there. Now, for context, everybody listening, 200 gigawatts. 1 gigawatt is for the size of 1 million people, a city. 10 gigawatts is a Los Angeles or New York City. And 100 gigawatts is about 10% of all the lights that are currently on in the entire world. So when someone comes to me and says, Bill, we need 200 gigawatts of power by 2030, my immediate response is like, cool, cool, cool. So you want 20 LAs? What, 20 New York cities? That's what you're asking us to build? It's an insane amount of power, which is why at Data Center World and beyond, you're going to be seeing a lot of this, a lot of innovation around power storage. I was shocked to see battery energy storage systems just absolutely rocket to the top of this list. Like, I mean, really, really wild, right? And I'm not surprised. We are going to be desperately trying to find ways with microgrids, with new power sources, with laying down our own pipes and supply. It's going to be insane. Jason.
So just a point of reference here. So right now, if you look as of January, there was only 35 gigawatts worth of new planned or under construction power plants coming from natural gas across the entire United States. 35 gigawatts.
That's it.
Right? So where's all this demand going to be satisfied?
Yeah.
And you're kind of looking at the screen, right? So it's literally utilizing that solar, but having to capture it on battery. But here's what I've never been able to get to is just like a UPS in a data center facility, how long is that battery going to last before it's depleted? Right? So if you have these utility scale battery units, let's say if there's a megawatt, 2 megawatt, 5 megawatt, 10 megawatt battery, how long does that juice last before it's depleted?
Well, but remember, right, Jason, these aren't replacements for UPSs, right? They can't, no battery system right now can, if there's a failure on a data center, immediately take the load. It just doesn't work that way. That's why we have diesel generators who can do that, right? So these battery systems are much more about storage and then working with intermediary power systems to push that energy back into the data center, or if it's captured, for example, that's how it's done, right? So these aren't going to be replacements, but not yet at least. But
so this is not an on-site. The batteries are not an on-site cogeneration. That is a utility scale solution.
It's storage. It's battery storage. Exactly, right? But of those 286 new exhibitors, oh my gosh, you guys, there's going to be a lot of power and a lot of battery innovation. I am so excited to see that kind of stuff. We're like a year or two away from solid state battery technology, which is going to just revolutionize the game. Those ceramics are wild. So that's going to be an exciting part of this. And to your point, this is another one. This is a new question that we ask. 66% are considering using on-site power gen to improve data center energy efficiency. Like, these numbers are jaw-dropping to me, in my opinion. Like, I think 5 years ago, this would have been like, maybe 20% are looking at on-site generation because they don't need it. They didn't need it, right? Now that conversation's completely shifted where Jason, to your point, like 35 gigawatts, champ, let's add a 0 to that just to be able to keep up. That's the kind of conversation we're having. I actually think that was it. Oh, there's recruiting forces. We didn't have any time to go there. Send me a note. Send me a LinkedIn note if we're not connected. This report literally was just published, I think, like either last week. My brain's foggy from all the trips that I've been doing. I can still smell the fresh digital print off of it. I can send this to you. All of you are AFCOM members. All of you have access to this report. But if you're lazy and you want to make a new fun connection on LinkedIn, just send me a note. I'll drop you on LinkedIn. Make sure you're registered. Make sure you're coming to the Data Center World Power. There's all my connection stuff. You can find me, like and subscribe. Actually, I don't do that.
So in our last minute debate, Bill, thank you so much. You were a little obviously we're privileged to have you here with us today. I'm very honored that you did so. I will say is this: we had it for all of our people we had an entirely additional group of slides for post PTC discussion points. I'll post those on our LinkedIn page. We can even potentially do an additional follow-up session for that piece alone. But if you get a chance, always great to see Bill speak. Get to Data Center World. If anybody has any questions about our chapter, by all means, send it our way, and we'll try and again post all of this to our YouTube channel as well.
I am a resource for you. Jason is my buddy. Most of the people on this call, many of the people on this call I know. In case you can't tell, I'm always like this. I love this industry. I literally got a network engineering and telecommunications undergraduate. I was like, I want to work in data centers when I was like a little young millennial. Now they call me a geriatric millennial, which is not necessary. Don't do that. I don't know why this radio station decided to call me that, but whatever. Jason, thank you for having me on. I appreciate all of your attention and all of your smiles and all of your head nodding. You're the reason that this industry is just absolutely fascinating and nonstop. Please, let's remain connected. Jason's your local resource. I'm your resource for a national, international perspective. Just keep your head on level. And the one final thing that I can tell you right now, the best way to encompass everything is fearless curiosity. That's the best guiding light that I can give you. That's the way you approach this industry right now, is just have an open mind, be curious, not judgmental. That's a Ted Lasso quote. Yeah.
Well, which was a Walt Whitman quote.
Yeah, it's exactly that he referenced in the show. Well done, Jason.
Yeah. But I'm writing down your quotes. I always love your quotes, Bill. So anyway, listen, thank you, everybody. We're at our time.
Thank you.
Everybody enjoy their day. And
Take
thanks
care.
also to the rest of the board for participating. And everybody have a great week.
Yeah.
You guys are
Guys,
awesome.
take care now. Thanks
Thank
for
you,
joining,
team.
everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.